Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Impetus Digital. At Impetus Digital, we built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. We work with life science companies from across the globe, and we've done so over the past 13 years to help companies do everything from virtualized or advisory board meetings, steering committee working groups, publications, medical education. And since the launch of our Insight event platform, we've been helping people with hackathons, big sales training, corporate meetings, and everything in between. But more importantly, at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations with some of the leading edge thinkers, the digital provocateurs, we can all work together to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. But it doesn't just start with a conversation. We need to do a lot of work to sustain those conversations. Is precisely the reason for us working with our platforms to create a series of asynchronous and synchronous touch points over time so that we can work to move agenda items forward, objectives, create policies, procedures, and move beyond the pill to really do some innovative things in healthcare. I am absolutely thrilled to have one of these leading edge thinkers. This is actually Sam Dubach. He's actually the chair and CEO of an amazing company called Mind Beacon. It's a behavioral health company that delivers evidence-based therapy through clinics and a digital platform. He's also the president and CEO of Elkland Capital Incorporated. This is actually a family-owned investment firm that's covering a wide range of industries, including health services, clean energy, marketing services, as well as technology. In addition, Sam is the co-founder of Edgestone Capital Partners. It's one of Canada's leading private equity firms, as well as the co-founder and former chair of Pathways to Education Canada. This is an internationally recognized and award-winning nonprofit organization focused on improving the lives of Canada's disadvantaged youth through educational attainment. Sam holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from Tufts University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. In the year 2000, Sam was recognized as one of Canada's top 40 under 40, and in 2005 was chosen as one of the 10 most influential alumni of his program. Welcome, Sam. Super thrilled to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate y'all giving me a chance to speak with you today.
Absolutely. What an interesting background. A lot of times when I'm speaking to people on our show, they've usually gone down the road of being in the healthcare space, working through various other places, either through research or in, an actual clinical background to land in an entrepreneurial place that they have. But you kind of come from it from a different place with a chemical engineering background and a huge background in investing. How on earth did you end up starting a company?
So I've started a lot of companies. Maybe I'm one of these guys that can't keep a job. I'm not quite sure how exactly that works. And I will say parenthetically, as you did my intro, thank you very much. It was very kind of you to say all those nice things. I'm going to have to get rid of the 2000 under 40 thing. That sort of shows you how old I truly am 21 years later. So we'll have to get rid of that one. I've always had a passion for building things. I've always had a passion for seeing opportunities and grabbing them. And it's one of the things a mentor of mine, Lizesh, taught me years and years ago. Sam, when you're floating down a river, you don't have to pick up every rock. You got to pick up the right rocks. Okay, if you're collecting stuff. So, I've always had a passion for doing that, whether it was in the for-profit business with Air Miles or the for-profit business with Edgestone, et cetera, or the not-for-profit Pathways to Education, or even the government, where we did a bunch of fun stuff, including the BDC work we did. I've always had a passion. Mental health, I'm a kid from Indiana, so a lot of the barriers that I face in mental health are classic barriers. And so, for me, the mental health care journey really began years and years ago, although I didn't know it as such, but it culminated in an event when my brother died back in October of 11. And I went into what was clearly a pretty bad depression afterwards. And notwithstanding, I'd been on the board for the Center of Addiction and Mental Health notwithstanding I had been on, I knew exactly what the Board of Foundation, I should say, I knew exactly what I wanted, what treatment, what therapy, what all of the stuff, and I knew exercise, I knew all of the things and the destigmatization of it. It was hard to get treatment. And as we came through it, my wife and I began to chat about it, and it became clear this was one of those rocks that we should pick up. It was one of those rocks that we should do something with, and we should try and fix it. And and that all sort of, those conversations came together in February, March of 2015, where actually it was my wife Claire and two doctors, Drs. Farvolden and Denisov, that partnered together to start the Mind Beacon Group. And while we originally started our journey thinking we'd build clinics across country to sort of make it more accessible and available in lots of places and build a brand and people would know you could go to CBT clinics, etc., we quickly pivoted because we realized we were trying to make effective evidence-based mental health care available, affordable, accessible to all. And importantly, when they're ready to access it, we knew we couldn't do it by people. We knew we had to change the game. We had to fundamentally change the game. And so that was kind of how we got started on the mental health care journey in business.
I love it. I just want to take a step back just because I find your investment background is so interesting, especially now. I mean, we're hearing all about retail investors and, there's, everything is becoming tokenized. The world is kryptonized, and it's just a really interesting place. I'm actually just curious about the lessons learned in being an investor, the kinds of things that you've looked for in terms of what makes a company tick, how to pick the hard rocks and the hard problems to solve. What are some of the things that you've learned that enables you to be successful running Mind Beacon today?
There are a number of things that I would tell you about, and whether it's the business model or the people, et cetera, there are a few things that sort of resonated with us and resonated. We ran about just under $2.5 billion worth of capital at Edgestone Capital Partners with my partner Gil and Steve and others. We used to look for a few things, and today I still think these things matter. And the first thing we looked for was a business model that worked, and this meant a big market, a market that was growing, not a fad market, a market that had a long-term secular change or a long-term growth change, something that was going to make it go on and on for a long period of time, not the fad of the moment, and a business that had, frankly, good economics, that had good margins, that you could look at and say, yeah, I can see how, the classic terms everyone uses, the customer acquisition costs can be made up quickly through the lifetime value of the customer, all that stuff. But you really had to make sure you understood the unit economics, because, as we used to like to say, the best management team in the world cannot make a bad business good. Now, the best management team can change it and can pivot it. But if you're fundamentally in a bad business, it's not going to happen. So one is we look for a really good business. And number two is because of B is if we've turned out that we weren't in a great business, we weren't in, weren't in a perfect business, we got that part wrong because you don't bat 1,000%, is we look for great management teams. And management teams really, as my partner Brian Kerman used to say, it had to support the PEST rule: passion, experience, speed, smarts, and trust. And of all of those things, it's experience. We can teach the experience. We've been in this game long enough. We can help with the experience, but you got to have the passion, and you got to have the trust, and you got to be fast, especially nowadays, as you point out, where things are being changed and the tokenism and all of the stuff that's happening. Things are moving faster and faster and faster. And in fact, a lot of the barriers that we used to have to start up a business, when we used to start up a business, the barriers of just the communication costs alone were huge. Just you had to put in telephone systems, you had to put in hardwired, you had to do things like that. Now you can start a business in your garage on a laptop with almost no barriers to entry. And so if you're going to do that, you really have to elevate that passion, experience, speed, smarts, and trust of the senior leadership team. And that's so critical. And then the third thing we always said was, and I firmly believe this, the only thing, if you have a good business at least, and you have a really good management team, the only reason it's going to fail is if you run out of gas. And so, everyone's always talking about, and they come to me when they're looking for investment, they say, oh, if we get, $1 million, that will last us for 7 months, and by then we'll be there, et cetera. And I can tell you, I never invest in those businesses. It always takes a little longer, notwithstanding the speed, notwithstanding the smarts. Things never go according to plan. And so I always tell people, you raise money when you can, and you raise as much as you can, and you worry about dilution later. So those are some of the things that we looked at. It really came down to the business model, the people, and was the gas tank full enough?
I love it. That is just absolute brilliance. You alluded to the original business around the CBT, which is Cognitive Behavioral Therapy Associates, which was really a website. It's a business model revolving around humans, people. The traditional way that we're used to getting therapy. And I'm just curious. You said that there's a pivot, but that business still exists. Curious about where and how and when the pivot started. What did it look like prior to COVID? And did it completely change after COVID-19? I'm just kind of curious about CBT Associates, which is the real people-based version of therapy as it relates to, one-on-one therapy, and the MindBeat version, which is, much more like, chat bot, text, artificial intelligence based therapy. Where did the two fit? And was it COVID based?
It wasn't COVID based. We'd actually pivoted long before COVID. And by the way, the CBT business continues to exist. We use the same language you use. We have a synchronous business, an asynchronous business, and a business with no interaction with the therapist, more of a self-guided business. I'm a firm believer that the future of all healthcare is asynchronous. Not exclusively asynchronous, but the only way to massively scale, the only way to massively see a whole bunch of people and make new treatments and constant treatment and monitoring and everything else available, affordable, and accessible is to do it in an asynchronous way. Having said that, a number of people want to interact with a therapist in a very synchronous way. They want to do what we're doing right now. They want to come to one of our clinics, which right now are closed because of COVID, but will be open again. They want to come into a clinic and see someone in person. They want that human touch. Mental health is about delivering what you need, how you'll consume it, when they'll consume it, etc. So we realized that back in 2017, really, when we were building out clinics, and we'd built out a number of clinics in GTA, and we're getting ready to expand the clinics even further. And what we found and what we really discovered was that that was a great idea for about a third of the people. 2/3 of people didn't want to come into one of our clinics. They didn't want to talk to anybody live. In fact, Oracle ran a study, which they published in the Wall Street Journal back in December, that said 82% of their people would rather talk to a bot than a person. Mental health is different than physical health. It's not the kind of thing that we're used to seeing where if you get a sore throat, boom, no problem, I'm going to go see a doctor, there's no shame. There still is this perceived stigma. There's still the issue of going and talking to your boss. There's this issue of having to get time off. There's this issue, like it's not fully recognized and people aren't fully comfortable with it. And so we really decided back then that we had to design a system that eliminated all the barriers. And the other big barrier is cost. If you go see one of our psychologists in our clinics or in our synchronous business today, that can be $250 an hour. I know in some clinics they charge $400 an hour. Like that's unattainable for vast majority of Canadians. All right. And while I was fortunate that I could actually spend the $250 an hour, it became grating on me. Like it was so expensive, so much money every time I'd go see somebody. And so what we tried to do is that we tried to just develop a program that provided the right level of care for what's afflicting you now and what you're ready to consume. Hence, if you look at what MindBeacon is all about, we're all about a continuum of care, light guided, navigational, self-educational information, all the way up to and including crisis text if you need to talk to someone. We have synchronous services where people can go and do one-on-one like this or in group. And we have asynchronous where they communicate with their therapist, and it's a real person, one-on-one relationship where they can communicate with their therapist via asynchronous messaging, either through our ICBT, our Internet Cognitive Behavioral platform, or through our direct messaging platform. So again, it's about delivering to you what you want, when you want, and how you want to consume it, because mental health isn't physical health. It's different.
It is so needed. And, it's really pretty amazing that this business was created prior to COVID. And I'm sure there's been this absolute uptake of this since the pandemic and probably will continue to do so. So tell us, you mentioned some things around this being text-based. I would like us to focus a little bit on what you're calling the therapist guided program. So
Yes.
it's almost like a chat bot version. So you're not really speaking to a real human. So this is for people who are busy or who may actually slot out certain times of their day where they're ready and willing and open to this kind of consumption or work that they're doing on themselves. Maybe they're a morning person, they like to do their work in the morning with somebody. Normally a therapist would not be available at 5 a.m. So tell us a little bit about the accommodation that these programs have,
Yep.
how long do they run, et cetera?
So in our therapist guided programs, you actually do communicate with a real person. This is a person that is a mental health care professional. It's a member of a regulated mental health college. They have strict rules and regulations which they abide by, but you're not doing it in real time. So in the traditional model, I'd meet with you, if you were my psychologist or therapist, I'd meet with you once a week or probably once every 2 weeks. And we'd sit for 50 minutes, hour session, whatever. And we'd sit there and we'd talk about certain things. And I might go away and have some homework. And if I had a question 3 days later, then I would write it down. And in 2 weeks, when I got back to see you, I would come talk to you about it. In our program, what happens is that we assign you, we take you through a very rigorous assessment. And if it looks like you're suffering from depression, we'd say, listen, try our depression protocol. And then we're going to assign you a therapist. And that's a real person. And that person sticks with you. So pick Jane, is a therapist of ours. So we'd say, Ellie, Jane is your therapist. And what happened is Jane would welcome you on the platform and she would assign you your first set of work, whether it's readings or worksheets or videos or whatever it might be. It's your first set of work. And as you complete that, or as you have questions, you'll message Jane and Jane will get back to you within 1 business day, typically. And then what happens is that allows you to progress through your treatment and progress through, because cognitive behavioral therapy is a lot about learning skills. It's about developing capabilities, developing coping mechanisms. And so Jane will then go through that with you, and you can message Jane as often or as infrequently as you want. In fact, we have it on all sales. We have some people that have messaged like 3-4 times throughout a 12-week course of treatment. And we have some people that message every day. What works for you works for us. And that's important. It's delivering it the way you want to consume it, the way you're prepared to consume it. That's what matters.
Sam, a lot of times people are, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think sometimes people are a little reluctant to come into these programs because they figure, oh, I don't have time for the next year to be, going on. A lot of times people think about like the Freudism, like lying on the couch and being there for like 30 years. Tell us a little bit about these digestible bite-sized programs and how long do they last?
So each one is designed to be done in each section of our depression protocol, for example, is designed to be done over a couple hours during a week, or as quickly as you want to go through it. If you want to move through more quickly, you can move through it. We've designed these programs to typically be 8 to 12 weeks, and people typically stay on them between 6 and 10. Okay, would be a good number of what they normally stay on. And they will move through the program, move through that as they want to. Now, one of the things that's unique about MindBeacon that exists very few other places in the world, the way we designed our program, is it's infinitely customizable. And the reason why, your depression is not my depression. A lot of times in depression, you may be suffering from panic. You may also have signs of anxiety. You may have issues about going back to work or talking to your boss or having a conversation with your loved ones. Our program is meant to be infinitely customizable. So if you're in, say, week 2 or 3, and you're saying, wow, I had what I think is a panic attack, and you describe it, and we go, yeah, that was Jane says, yeah, that was a panic attack. Next time you come on our system, you'll see information and content on panic attacks, how to think about panic attacks. I haven't really come clean with my spouse or my partner. Well, you'll come on and there'll be information about how do you talk to your partner about this? How do you talk to loved ones about this? How do you approach those conversations? I have to tell my boss. Next time you come on, there'll be information about how do I approach my boss? How do I have that conversation? What are some of the do's and don'ts during that conversation? And so it's all meant to be bite-sized and digestible, But cognitive behavioral therapy is work. So it's not going to be a 1-minute thing every week. It's going to be work that you do, but you do it on your time when you want. I always say we're busy on train. Before COVID, we were busy on trains a lot. People tend to use us a lot on trains. Obviously, they're not on trains that much anymore in Canada, but they used us on trains, or they used us at night. We're very busy at 11, 12 o'clock at night with people on the platform as they're sort of, not sleeping or whatever else, so they finish their daily work. And that's what's kind of neat about the asynchronous methodology, because it not only works for you, we're focusing a lot not only on the client aspect of it, but the asynchronous technology also works for the healthcare worker, because a lot of our healthcare workers, in fact, the majority by number of our healthcare workers have other jobs. So they're able to come home at night or during a break, and they're able to log onto our system, and they're able to help their clients when they have the time to do it. And that gives them the ability to do what they like to do. And that's why they're in the profession, is to help people. It allows them to do it on their time, in their scheduling, allows them to do it remotely. And importantly, also, it allows them in times of, economic hardship, which we are in to a large degree, it allows for folks to make a few extra dollars by coming on and doing us part-time. And for our clients, it dramatically increases the number of people available. So it really is, the asynchronous allows for this win-win-win combination, which is one of the key reasons why I think, and you obviously you consult on it, and I know the work you do, is why I think we're agreeing that for a large degree, asynchronous is the future of massively scalable healthcare. Now, of course, AI is important as well, I'm not saying it, but asynchronous certainly is important.
Beautiful, beautifully said. I love the business model of Mind Beacon, starting off with giving people the option of having the live therapy sessions. So having the synchronous, if that's something that they choose to do, either virtually or in person when you eventually open up. And then this opportunity through the asynchronous, so the therapist guided programs, doing it in your own time on any device over a certain period of time. But you also have these other things around educational platforms. So the Stronger Minds community. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is it just a series of blogs, or is there actually a community of people with certain attributes, conditions that people can interact with, or what does that look like?
So we have two different things. We have Stronger Minds, which is a informational resources. It's highly curated informational resources, and whether they be video blogs or written, or whether they're just links into key readings you might want to do, or where you can get help for something, those sorts of things that we have for sure. But we've also have in our subscription businesses a peer-to-peer community. And that peer-to-peer community is meant so that you can log on in a purely anonymous way. And you can message with people who are suffering similar issues from you. People who have, depression because they've lost a partner, issues of anxiety for whatever reasons that they may have. You're able to go on that and share your experiences with other people who are sharing their experiences back with you, talking about what it meant to them, how they made them feel, what sort of coping mechanisms they've had, resources they've tried, a whole number of other things. And that's done in a moderated basis, so that obviously it is meant to be and create a safe environment for you to have those conversations. And it's moderated, so if something goes askew, we're able to react to it. And that gives you, again, another tool in the toolkit. It's an attempt from if you think about it from a health policy point of view, we have a good number, but not nearly enough, of highly capable, highly educated, highly professional individuals who day in, day out talk to people, sit with people, video with people to help them with their mental health. Not nearly enough. And it's not possible to solve it with human resources, because you can't train them up fast enough, and you couldn't afford it even if you wanted to. There simply isn't the economics there today to deal with the mental health that exists, because we've only been talking about primary mental health. Another topic we should cover is comorbid along with physical. All right. And so What we're trying to do with Mind Beacon, with our entirety of our platform, our full continuum of care, some people call it a stepped approach to care, but our continuum of care is saying, hey, listen, let's try the lightest intervention we can that we think will work, the most highly scalable intervention, the thing that costs the less to deliver, and see if that works. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, great. We'll step you up to the next more intense. And if that doesn't work, maybe the peer-to-peer didn't help you at all, we'll step you up into the ICBT platform or the direct messaging platform or into the synchronous platform. And God forbid you're in serious trouble, you need to get on the crisis text capability right away. The goal here is to deliver the service when you need it. And also because mental health is a chronic condition. It's not like strep throat where if but for 6 days and the right antibiotic, you're cured. And these things come and go. It's a human condition, and I can attest to it with my own self. It comes and goes. And so you need to be able to jump back and forth into the level you need. Like today, I may need to talk to someone. In 6 weeks, I may just need to share an experience on the peer-to-peer platform. Something weird happened. Gee, I wonder if there's any literature on that. Maybe I just need to read and say, oh, that's perfectly normal. Sometimes when you take drugs, for instance, ringing in the ear, tinnitus, kind of a normal side effect of Lexapro and other drugs. Maybe you just have to read about that and understand what's happening to you. So that's the goal of trying to provide this level. And basically, as a health policy perspective, leaving our highly trained, super professional people to deal where they're needed most. They're not needed for super light anxiety. That typically can be dealt with on our asynchronous platform, but they are needed for highly comorbid issues.
Yeah, so it's exactly the way AI or any of these other asynchronous tools, it almost acts like a vetting or a triage service. So you're saying it reserves the ability to focus the individuals with the expert advice on the really core focus areas or the key priorities. So it really is a scalable model. So you're giving users, health consumers, a choice of ratcheting it up or ratcheting it down, or picking and choosing services as required. What exactly is the user experience? Is it web-based? Is there an interesting sales? Is there an interesting app on the phone? And the push out of materials, is this done, discussion with therapists and then a push out of materials and activities? Tell us a little bit about what the user experience is like.
Yeah, so you can do it on any device you want. It's web-enabled type of experience. And you can use it on whatever device you want to do it on. And you can do it when you want to do it. Typically what happens is you'll come on and do an assessment. Let me say, first of all, we educate you on what types of things we have. And you may just say, listen, I just want to talk to somebody. No problem. You just schedule that event right there on the Mind Beacon platform. You can schedule it right there, and you can be talking to someone here in the next couple of days, and you have your choice of the level person you might want to speak to. We do a really quick assessment about what your issues are so we can match you to someone that's really good and understands that issue. If you say, I'm not sure what I want, then we'll typically have you do a full assessment. And that assessment, to be clear, it does not deliver a diagnosis. Although if you want one, we can give you one on our platform, but our assessment typically does not. Most people don't want a real diagnosis. They just want to say, hey, what does it seem to indicate I'm doing? And so what happens is that we'll say to you, well, listen, looks like you're suffering from depression or anxiety or PTSD or chronic illness or chronic pain, or now we've just delivered our alcohol protocol. So we're now into substance abuse. Do you want to go it? And if they want to do it, then what we do is we assign them a therapist, and that therapist sends them a welcome note, and that therapist is their therapist. It becomes a one-on-one relationship with a real human being who is a trained mental health care professional. And that person will then preload the first set of content for them, and you'll go through it. And until you finish that and do your outcome measures, we won't release any more content. Because we want to make sure you've gone through it, or you've at least messaged your therapist, and we know that you understand it. And also fundamental to everything we do, because we're kind of data geeks, is tracking and reporting to you how you're doing. So for instance, if you're in depression, we'll do our PHQ-9 scale. We'll do the PHQ-9 scale and a couple other scales that we've developed. But the PHQ-9 would be a common scale. The GAD-7, anxiety, there's a whole bunch of scales. And so we would then measure that, because we fanatically track outcomes, as we look at, and that's important for you. It's important for your therapist to know if it's working. And obviously it's important for our paying customers who want to understand that is our product worth using. And so we do that because it makes sense for everybody in the triangle, the client, the therapist, and the system or payer, depending on who it is. And we report with you every week on that. And we say, hey, here's how you're doing. Looks like you're slipping back a little bit. And then every 4 weeks, we do a whole series, a larger series of assessment tests again, because we want to see if anything else is coming up. Hey, it looks like you're getting some anxiety, or hey, really this kind of now is sort of creeping into PTSD. We need to look at that. And that gives us a way to not only what you're saying to us, we analyze, but also look at the factual numbers and outcome measures that you're doing. Measurement-based care is critical to our platform and critical to everything we do. And it allows us to not only understand if we're doing well and delivering value, but also, most importantly, above all, allows us to adjust your care and your path and the information we're providing you so that you can get better. That's number one in our gig, is driving outcomes for people.
So interesting around all of that, especially around the reporting, the dashboards, what progress is looking like, and the metrics and the key performance indicators, absolutely essential. And that looks like you've got that all covered. There's probably different entry points. There's patients coming in and signing through and doing the assessments and starting up. But a lot of times only finding your portal or your solution or Mind Beacon through other people who are referring. For example, being able to get referrals through hospitals or from their direct physicians or their therapists, and maybe many other community organizations. So I'm just kind of curious on this, is how do you work with those organizations and to make sure that they're providing your name, and also working with them so that any sorts of outcomes, dashboards, progress reports are getting also reported in to the healthcare provider. And a core question around that also has to do with interoperability with the kinds of system solutions, electronic health records that they're already using in their general workflow.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're moving in that direction. We're not yet fully interoperable with all of the ERMs, the medical record systems, but we're moving in that direction. Clearly, there are standards that have come up, especially Knights from Fire and other stuff, that we're moving towards being fully compliant and fully interactive with, although not there yet. Right now, we can get information out to everybody else in the traditional ways that are secure and allowable under HIPAA and PF and all of the security regulations and privacy gigs, but we're not yet fully integrated with the medical record system. But that's clearly the future. The future is to take what is today, and really no one is. I mean, if you think about your psychologists, they're not linked into the Cerners and the Epics. They're not linked into the provincial health systems. We're the same way, although we collect all the data and we provide that information. Clearly, the future in mental health care is to link in to the systems that exist today to allow for free flow, secure free flow of information in the system to the people who are permissioned to receive it.
Absolutely, so essential. Let's be really frank. Physicians are inundated. They've got so many other things to be working on, and everybody's tapping into their EHRs, and there's this app and that app. They're distracted, and everybody is vying for their attention. So our brains are lazy. We like to take the easy way out and do things that feel automatic and that are already involved in the workflow. So what sorts of things are Mind Beacon doing to try to get mind share, to get the attention of these busy healthcare providers, through things like, I guess just different kinds of posters or brochures? Do you have things like navigators or program success managers? How do you ensure that there's like a seamless interface so that everybody involved can do this in a really simple and intuitive manner?
Yeah, in our corporate business that we do with corporations, we are fully integrated into their websites and into their communication programs and into all of their messaging around mental health. And lots of our great clients do terrific jobs at making that happen. And while we don't talk about our clients, a few of them have allowed us to talk about World Bank being one, like super integrated into what they're doing, and it's all great. In the healthcare system itself, we do spend time making sure doctors are aware of us, GPs especially, because most people go to their GP, and obviously make sure that psychiatrists are aware of us. But I think the province of Ontario and the federal government, the federal people have done a tremendous job at making mental health care available, affordable, accessible by making it without a required prescription, without a required referral. You can go on the mental health care site of Ontario right now, and you can access MindBeacon for free. You don't need a GP referral. You don't need any referral. You can go on, we will assess you, and you can come on and take that. And tens of thousands of people are doing that. Okay. And they're getting the mental health care they need. The government of Canada, through Wellness Together Canada, can also get to MindBeacon. You need to talk to someone in that system to get for inside the system once you get assessed, but they're also sending people over there. I think those are the systems that will work best in the future. Let people go and get the type of mental health care they need. Let them get it when they need it and immediately. Let's not delay and force them to wait 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 weeks to get an appointment. I need help now.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm depressed now. I'm not, it's May, what is it, May 31st? I'm depressed now. I'm not depressed September 20th. I may still be depressed September 20th, and likely we'll still be having problems, but I need help now. And I really applaud, the provincial government, the federal government have really gone out on a limb and done that. And they have helped like we've had over 100,000 accounts created. It's just like 100,000 people are getting the help they need quickly and super inexpensively for the province. Super inexpensively. I mean, it's very efficient.
And for those people who are listening in Ontario, MindBeacon, certain components of it are being provided free of charge, I guess, with certain terms and conditions. And, I guess through the government of Ontario. So for anybody who's interested, you should definitely check that out. On that note, Sam, this obviously begs the question about your company's business model, both as it applies at the employer level, but also at the hospital and institution level. So ultimately, we realize that at an employer level, there is potentially positive outcomes like presenteeism, reduction of absenteeism, productivity, and then, various other things. Who is ultimately paying for your product, and how do payers also get involved?
So ultimately, our product doesn't survive if we're not delivering a very strong return on investment. Okay, so if what we do for an employer or for a health system doesn't make sense long-term economically, then they won't use us. And what I'm proud to say is our return on investment numbers are quite high. You look at in disability, for example. So the number one cost in disability is mental health. It can account for as much as 70% of disability claims. When Manulife published on their website, did a study of us, we didn't even know, they were studying us against a control system that they use. They found that we reduced absence, the duration of the absence, by 17%. That has an enormous thing. If you think about the fact that a lot of companies put, $150,000 to $250,000 against a disability claim, if you can reduce that duration by 17%, and you're paying less than $1,000 to do it, like that has huge return on investment. Likewise, if you look at the presenteeism and some of the estimates that some of our longer term clients have done, the view is that it can be $8, up to $8 for every dollar they spent on us in reduced. And if you look at the McKinsey work that's been published over the week, they republished over the weekend, I happened to read it, they estimate that it's $4 to $6 for every dollar spent on effective evidence-based mental health care. So that's a real return on investment that you have to be able to generate. The reality of the world is you have to be able to generate, as well as, you're doing good for people. people say one of the things, when we started the business, when Claire started the business and I got involved afterwards, we fortunately were not in a position where we started the business because we had to put food on our table. We started a business because we wanted to solve a social ill that we actually had experienced personally, that I had experienced personally. And so we got in this business for social good. I mean, we are kind of an ESG early forerunner of the ESG movement. And we got in this because we wanted to solve a problem. And because we figured, given I'd been on the board of CAMH Foundation, I knew exactly this. We had good friends of ours that were psychologists and psychiatrists and blah, the whole gig. Notwithstanding all that, it was hard for us, hard for me, let's personalize it, me, to get treatment. And if we figured if it was hard for me, it was really hard for a lot of people who weren't as lucky as we were. I mean, we were fortunately very lucky in our lives. And so as a consequence, that's what we got into it for. So, but having said that, when we started it, we had the choice. We originally were going to start as a charitable endeavor, but the problem with charitable endeavors, and we knew it from Pathways Education, we raised tens and tens of millions of dollars a year, the charity that I founded the national of, they're not necessarily sustainable. To be sustainable, it has to be a business that generates a return on investment so investors continue to back it. And that's why we ended up making this a business, not a charity. And that's why we made it a for-profit, not a not-for-profit. And that's why we ended up going that way, because we felt like that what's worth doing, it has to be sustainable or it's not worth doing. Absolutely. So that kind of gives you a little bit about how we got to the background and how we thought about it. Could we have done it as a charitable organization or a not-for-profit organization? Probably could have done it. I think we would have had a lot more hurdles along the way.
Yeah, huge. We would be remiss without talking about the incredible impact that COVID-19 has had. I mean, I'm not trying to downscale the immensity of what you experienced with the death of your brother, but certainly COVID-19 has been, both tragic, but in so many other ways, there's a silver lining, and that is a lot of tech companies like yourselves who were in the right place at the right time. There became a groundswell or a tailwind that really helped to grow and build the business. You've probably saw a huge influx of people coming in needing help. What are some of the things that your therapists have seen around everything from PTSD to gambling addiction, food addiction, alcohol problems, and how did you ensure that the therapists that you're utilizing in your programs have the proper training to manage the immensity of what has come through your front door?
A lot to unpack there. First of all, I think we just got to take a moment to pause and to remember everybody that's been affected by COVID-19. It's crushing. And unfortunately for the mental health, as we come out of the physical side of COVID, you will see the echo pandemic go on for years. There have been studies, not our studies, but studies done on Fukushima and that disaster, and studies done on SARS, studies done on 9/11. These go on for years. And you think about our younger people who have in their formative social years, who have been locked in for a year and terrified by all of this. We're going to be dealing with this for my lifetime for sure. Mm-hmm. We'll be dealing with this issue for years and years to come. And we've seen it clearly. And unfortunately, we've seen it in terms of dramatic increases in anxiety, health anxiety, PTSD among our first responders, clients. We've seen the levels of depression. We've seen the hit to younger people, but also all walks of life. COVID has, there's no doubt when you look at the physical aspect, it is hit in disadvantaged neighborhoods and areas worse than it's hit advantage. On the mental health side, it's hit everybody. And so, really, how do we help those that need their help? Especially, and how do we get to those neighborhoods and those people that aren't maybe as hooked in technologically, don't have some of the economic capabilities that others have? How do we focus on getting to those people? I'm proud to say that one of the things Mind Beacon has, as you look at our system and our asynchronous system, we have people, all Canadians, but from 107 different countries of origin. And so we have been able to, and we track very much by group, demographic group, et cetera. We track very much through all the genders, et cetera, who we help. And we really do make an effort to get there. So it's been devastating, and it's going to go on for a while. And that's why, the more people that are focused on delivering digital health, and especially digital mental health, the more it's going to be needed in the future. And it's going to be needed again for a while.
Absolutely. We have a lot of people who listen to our show and follow us who are in the pharmaceutical industry. I guess the question comes down to is, and we've talked a little bit about some of the business model and where funding comes from, et cetera, at the workplace and with payers. The question really comes down is, how can pharma potentially partner with MindBeacon? There's a lot of products that are used, or medications that are used for depression and anxiety and many other mental health disorders, addictions. There's a lot of products going off patent and looking for interesting, innovative ways to extend patent expiry dates.
Yeah.
And just looking for generally interesting apps to differentiate versus competitors. And the final comment is really around clinical trials and being able to get a cohort of potential patients with specific conditions that one could tap into easily in the new sort of decentralized trial marketplace that we're in. What are some of the ways that pharma can partner with MindBeacon?
I'm tempted just to say yes. All of those things you just listed. I mean, so let me give you some examples of what we are doing. Number one is we are partnering with some drug companies on high value drugs for conditions where comorbidity with mental health is very high. If you look at diabetes, it's no secret what I tell Doc Livongo. If you look at diabetes, about 70% of diabetics within a certain period of time after being diagnosed as type 2 diabetics, they either become clinically depressed or clinically anxious. And the studies are really clear. If you treat the mental health at the same time you treat the physical health, you have far better adherence to the drugs. A1C is reduced, rehospitalizations are reduced, et cetera. That goes across all chronic conditions. There's not a chronic condition out there where people are walking away from that diagnosis, high-fiving each other and going, yeah, I got it. Okay. They're all walking away going, oh, my life has changed. Will I ever be the same? They're going to be depressed, anxious at least. So we are partnering with some drug companies here to offer MindBeacon, our asynchronous MindBeacon, along with the drug when it's done. And we're having some pretty interesting effects of that. Two is, of course, you mentioned the decentralized clinical stuff, clinical trials. We haven't done that yet, but we have a large cohort of, you tell us what you want to deal with, we can deal with it. We've got all of that data. The third thing I think is really to enlarge it is, if you think about what we are in Ontario, we are effectively an over-the-counter drug that the government pays for. We're digital therapeutic. Okay. Now, do we the strict definition in the States for the Digital Therapeutic Alliance, and that's another story, is no intervention by a human. We can do that too, but our asynchronous, we have intervention by a human because we think it helps stickiness. In fact, we know it helps stickiness. We know it helps outcomes. 82% of our people see symptom improvement. 67% now see clinically significant symptom improvement when working on MindBeacon. So we have terrific outcomes. If you think about it, I think, drug companies of the future will be a combination of chemical and digital. And that's clearly where it's going. You're seeing that. You're seeing that in Germany. You're seeing that in some of the stuff that's going on in the States. You're seeing that. And I think finding that right capability, especially for those that are dealing with a lot of chronic disease, being able to offer the mental health will show, to a certain company, drug companies need adherence, right? Drug companies need adherence to their treatments and fidelity to their treatments to show the outcomes that they need so that patients keep taking, et cetera. MindBeacon can help with all of that. So it's really all of what you mentioned, but those are specific examples of where we're actually working today.
The MindBeacon business model is brilliant. I mean, at the end of the day, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we hear over and over again, especially through books like Eric Topol and others, that you can't necessarily, at least right now, replace human empathy. So the people portion of what you're doing really is sort of the secret sauce. But one does have to ask the question about the future of integration of AI. We've heard about programs like Wobot and other sort of chatbot generated CBT programs, and many other ones that are developed for diabetes, weight loss, et cetera, where it's completely user generated and through machine learning and
Mhm.
natural language processing creates these uber customized user experiences. Is this something that's in the hearts and minds of the future of MindBeacon, especially as it relates to eventually going into a regulatory approval of a 501, becoming a medical device, software as a medical device, and actually going down that route? Where is your mindset around true integration of AI in the system?
100% going down that path. But again, you have to think about it in the continuum of care, where appropriate. If you're on the early stage stuff and you are mildly depressed or lightly depressed, and you are looking for a massively scalable intervention, then yeah, let's try that. But if that doesn't work for you, okay, and you really need to chat live with somebody, then you just step into our direct messaging capability. If you want a combination of that, you can go into our ICBT. If you think you need something that's more synchronous in nature, so you really want to have a real-time conversation like what we're having now, no problem. It is an important part of the continuum of care, but the solution is the continuum of care. The solution isn't any one vertical. So, you look at companies in the States that focus just on direct messaging. Hot companies, one's doing a SPAC right now, okay, at a big number. Okay, or a company that, Blackstone just put a bunch of money into a company just as ICBT. Interesting for sure. And the US is big enough where you can focus a bit on the vertical, but the solution to the problem is the continuum of care. It's no different than if you were starting up a physical healthcare system, you wouldn't just have a urologist. That doesn't really help people that have, throat, cancer or heart conditions. You have to have the full continuum of care in physical health. You have to have the full continuum of care in mental health. And part of that, without a doubt, is AI-driven, machine language, natural language processing, data-driven interventions that allow you to not only get better at what you do, but it allows you to drive the costs down and drive the accessibility up. Everything needs to be about driving costs down, barriers down, accessibility up. Everything we do is about having to make it not only okay to access mental health care, but almost, well, why didn't you access mental health care? Like, what's wrong with you for not accessing it? The same way you would say to someone who said, yeah, I knew I had cancer, but I didn't go.
The stigma
like, what was your response be to that person? You'd be like, well, okay.
We've heard a lot, and still to this day hear about the stigma of having mental health.
Yeah.
We're now emerging out of one of the biggest, most devastating things that many of us will probably ever experience in our lifetime.
Hope so.
One thing that's interesting, though, is we're also emerging or delving into, if you will, into a world of an era of dispersion, an era of exponential everything, right? The demonetization of everything. Like, everything is becoming technologically demolished or rebuilt, however, which way you want to look at it. And so we're all in front of screens. We're all living in virtual worlds. We're all living in augmented reality. What is your thoughts, predictions, if you will, of the impact that that's going to have on general mental health? And if it becomes so widespread and so prevalent in the population, will there no longer be a stigma associated because it becomes the general malaise or predicament that we all find ourselves in the future?
I don't think I'm qualified or smart enough to figure that one out, to be honest with you. What I do think, there's a couple of things that I hope happen in the future. First of all, I don't believe that stigma will go away completely anytime soon. And I think there are, certain things that, to be honest, I think I worry about. Do I want to be driving on a bus between London, Ontario and Toronto, Ontario, with a driver that suffers severe panic attacks on the highway? Maybe not. I'm not sure if that's stigma or not, but I don't really want that. So I think, we've got to be careful about what we call there. I think the more we talk about, the more we come out about it, the better everyone is. The more we normalize it, it's okay, which I think actually will relieve some of the pressure just by normalizing it. There are some greats that have gone before. The late Michael Wilson, who did the work, the people at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Foundation, Tammy Cope, who actually came up with Bell Let's Talk along with George at Bell. I think there's just been some great idea. Mary Deacon, who's a big champion of it. I think there's some people that are out there championing it, and I have nothing but enormous respect and gratitude for those people who have done that before. And I think the more we do it, the better off we are. As we move into a virtual world, I worry about depersonalization. Me talking to you on the phone versus knowing you and whatever else, it's different. And so what I worry about in our kids, and we have we're blessed to have 4 young adults now, is that I want to make sure that they don't lose that real human interaction, that really human such stuff. So I'm hoping that this becomes an augmentation tool and not a replacement tool. So I can tell you, even in our business, we are going back into the office, not full time, but we are going back in the office because we believe that having that having that connection, having that brainstorming in person, doing that sort of stuff has super big value. And so I hope that this becomes an augmentation, not a replacement.
Lovely. I think wonderful, thought-provoking words to end this at the top of the hour. For anybody who's interested in connecting with Sam to talk about MindBeacon, how your company, your brand might be able to partner, connect, learn more, we will be leaving his contact information in the show notes, so please be on the lookout for that. If you were interested in this discussion, please also check out impetusdigital.com. We are the ones who are going to be able to have conversations with the SAMs of the world and other stakeholders, asynchronously and synchronously, through a series of really creative touch points so that we can work on things like mental health policies, coming up and creating new ways of merging these kinds of technologies with your brand and how you're going to include this in your patient support programs or apply for something in a regulatory submission, et cetera. These are the kinds of things that we do at Impetus. So please check out our website. We'd really appreciate if you can like and subscribe to our channel, and would love if you can leave us a review on our podcast. We want to thank everybody for their time today. Thank you, Sam, for a wonderful conversation and many best wishes for MindBeacon. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day ahead.